A little bit behind, but that's okay. It's always good to limit a public speaker because they don't limit themselves. My name is Jake MacAulay. I am the CEO of the organization Institute on the Constitution. We are a ministry that teaches the biblical worldview of our founding fathers and also our founding documents. And you can find us, our website is theamericanview.com right here. I also have a display table upstairs. Sorry, I'm just latching in my microphone. And we also have a Facebook, Twitter, all that good stuff, social media-wise. Every week I put out a YouTube video that commentates on popular culture, or actually Donald Trump's Twitter account. But what's going on in government today, and we apply a biblical, constitutional worldview to it. So we do it in 3-minute videos. They're very fun, very interactive. It's a free subscription. If you want to, you can go to our YouTube channel and check that out. All right. So our organization was started in 2002. Michael Perutka, who is our founder, ran for president in 2004. Quick story of mine. You'll probably hear if you've heard it already before. My classes are going to be different. We're going to be coming at this subject matter at different angles, but I think you'll hear a common theme through my presentation, and that is God is sovereign over everything, including government, and America acknowledges that. Now, whether or not we acknowledge it is irrelevant, right? God is God, but there's many countries throughout the world that don't acknowledge it, that think the government is God. We are different in that aspect. In 2004, Michael was running for president. So if I rewind back to my days when I was in 8th grade, 7th grade, 6th grade, I played varsity sports at a pretty young age. I had a college scholarship I was looking forward to in academics as well. And about 10th grade, I got involved with a long crowd of friends. Now, everybody knows what the Bible says, that bad company corrupts good character. Hey, that's true. After I was in 10th grade, I went in a downhill spiral in my life, and by the time I was a senior, I was kicked out of school, and I would have went to jail. I'd been to treatment numerous times. But I was only 17, so they put me in a place called Teen Challenge. Has anybody heard of Teen Challenge? Yes. I was actually one of those teens. And I became a Christian, and it was a huge transformation in my life. There was a 180 that happened. I'll maybe explain a little bit of that at the end of the seminar, but I became an evangelical Christian. So prior to that, I was the kid who was walking down the street, his pants hanging off his butt, very disrespectful. I didn't wear my hat the right way. And you would say, that's why America's going to hell in a handbasket. Look at that kid. Well, God changed me, so I believe there's hope for every individual. But then I became the evangelical. We went all around the country. We had a Christian rock band. It was awesome. Big tour bus. We were telling people about Jesus, going into public schools, talking about it. And I started getting in trouble. And that shocked me, because I did not grow up a Christian. Everybody's separation of church and state. I'm like, separation of what? What are you talking about? I'm just trying to tell my message, Don't you want me to help kids get off drugs, get away from suicide, blah, 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 blah. Turned out they didn't. I didn't understand it, though. I never voted either. I never got involved. I never engaged in the culture in that way, because Jesus doesn't want you to vote. He doesn't care about that. He doesn't care about D.C. He never even visits there. I used to live there. But I realized I was derelict of part of my duty. How many of you have evangelical friends that don't get involved in this subject matter? It's a sad thing because of all Christians would just vote their values. Just vote. It's not that difficult. It's pretty easy. It's easier than watching every episode on Netflix of your favorite show, because we miss those sometimes. Voting, you just go and cast your ballot for your values. But it wasn't happening. I was problem person number 2 in our culture. I was that evangelical. I would have said, you're not doing God's will. What's wrong with you? Come on, you're wasting time. Win people to Jesus. That's what we're supposed to do. Michael was running for president in 2004, and he was campaigning. His slogan was God, Family, Republic. He came up and met my ministry because I wanted to know why this political dude was talking about God. It didn't make sense to me. I said, Jake, will you please just take this course, and you will see how intricately woven God's hand is through the foundations of America. And I said, sure, I'll take it. So I took it, and I got addicted. I was hooked. And I started teaching about those biblical patterns. You know why? Because now in culture and what I was doing in my ministry, I was persecuted heavily because of the things that people didn't understand, like separation of church and state, and faith and values in the public realms and in civic realms. So that's my story. That's how I wound up to be the president. of Institute on the Constitution. Our senior instructor is Pastor David Whitney. Our vice president is Massey Campos. He's in Texas doing a homeschool convention this year. He's a first-generation American. Both of his parents immigrated from Mexico. Our dean of instructors is Ricky Pepin. She's a brilliant woman. She used to work for the FBI. She repented, so we hired her. There we go. Okay. I start all my seminars except for yesterday because my server was down. So actually, the seminar you saw yesterday was a fake it till I make it thing. I'm not supposed to reveal that to you, but that's what it was. How many of each animal did Moses bring on the ark? I'm talking to him. I remember that story differently. Moses split the sea. He didn't need an ark. Is it possible to end a sentence with the word the? End a sentence with the word the. Well, I'm just wondering, is it possible? Can you give me an example? No, you can't give me an example of a sentence that ends in the word the. I've given you 2 examples. The question, is it possible? And then I said, no, it's not possible to end a sentence with the word the. Sir, Pastor,
yes.
What's the name of the raised print that deaf people use? The raised print.
Blind people use Braille.
Blind people use Braille. Deaf people don't use raised print. Okay, can you spell the word, man that was laughing at this poor woman, can you spell the word shop out loud for me? Shop. It's right there.
Spell the word shop. S-H-O-P.
Very good. One more time.
One more time. I know.
No, spell shop one more time.
S-H-O-P.
All right. What do you do at a green light? You
Stop.
don't follow her out of the parking lot. Get to that green light and all of a sudden hit the brakes and you're going to just bang.
That was good.
So you see how I'm leading you. That's what education has become in a lot of ways, hasn't it? Just watch MSNBC. Right? We're being led down a certain vein, and I want you to think critically. You're homeschoolers for crying out loud. So we need to think critically. Now, these are my children. Our founding fathers wrote the Constitution. They told us why they did. They wanted to train the next generation. Okay? And so they wrote it in the preamble. Let's read it together at the bottom. We gave you the Constitution to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Posterity is not a word we use very often anymore, but that means the kids. Like Hillary Clinton, she loves the kids, right? Yeah. So our founding fathers loved the kids. They wanted them to have liberty. I want my children to have liberty. That's why I train them at homeschool. They're all extremely brilliant, very smart. They used to travel with me a lot more than they do now. They still do. Around the country, I give presentations as well. My oldest son does my YouTube videos with me. He's brilliant and snarky, and I love it. But he actually was in a confirmation class. The little girl sitting next to him, he gave an answer, and the little girl sitting next to him said to the pastor, "How does he get so smart, Pastor?" And the pastor pointed to me in the back of the room and said, "Do you see that man back there? His wife." So, this is my wife, Heather. Now, she does a video with my kids, but you're going to have to come to my next session to see it. We go to Article 5 of the Bill of Rights for this one because we are talking about basically Christianity in the Constitution, right? Is that the subject? Oh, it's faith values in the Constitution. Same diff, right? Just different title. The Fifth Amendment, let's read it together. No person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Life, liberty, property. Say that with me.
Life, liberty, property.
That's LLP, okay? Are you down with LLP? We're old. We're old. LLP, life, liberty, property. Those are God-given rights. Genesis 1, chapter 27. God made Adam and Eve, created them in His own image. He said, "Be fruitful, multiply, replenish the earth." So first He gave them life, then He gave them liberty. Go run around, do stuff. Then He said, "Subdue the land and take dominion." He gave you the right to property. God gave that. No man can take it away. How many of you believe we're born equal? That's what a lot of people believe, but there's no woman in this room that's born equal to me. No person of color in this room born equal to Jake MacAulay. This is where people that invite me say, "Oh my goodness, what did we invite?" Let's read the Declaration of Independence to prove our point. We hold these truths to be self-evident.
That all men are created equal.
Stop! Does it say born equal?
Created.
Two very different terms with very different meanings. And the consequence of screwing this up is big. If we have to wait till we're born to be equal and have the right to life, liberty, property, then a child in the womb doesn't have the right to life, liberty, property. But the Constitution says a child in the womb does. Why? Because God said in Genesis 1, He created. He didn't born them. They were created equal. And so God creates in the womb. Therefore, a child in the womb has the right to life, liberty, property. Okay? Our founding fathers protected life right here. Abortion is illegal. It's not legal in America. It's not. Oh, Jake, come on, man. You're so old school. You're so dumb. No. The document says it. The law of the land says abortion is illegal. Yeah, but the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court are just referees. Anybody ever been to a ball game? At halftime, does the ref change the rules and say, hey, this team gets 7 downs, this team only gets 2 now? Imagine if they did that in the Super Bowl and New England was playing the Eagles and New England was winning 50-0. And the refs changed the rules and gave the Eagles 7 downs and New England only gets 2. The New England fans would tear them up. They would tar and feather them. That did used to happen here. That's what they would do because they know referees can't change the rules. The Supreme Court doesn't have any legislative authority. The first sentence in the Constitution gives that to Congress. So the Supreme Court can't change the rules. Why in America? We would not tolerate at a football game, but we tolerate it every day in our lives. Judges legislating from the bench. Because we're constitutionally ignorant. We don't understand that a right is something I have freedom to exercise. We all want our rights. Everybody wants their rights, right? Purple daisy people. I want my rights to be a purple daisy. I want my right to be this. I want my right to be that. Okay, let's talk about rights. According to biblical thinking, and the way that our foundation of thinking in this country started, you don't have the freedom to break the law. That's not freedom, that's crime, right? Freedom is only found in the confines of the law. It's inside of the law. So if you're following the law, it's like you're inside of a city with a wall around it, and that wall would be the law. And you're in the city, you have your rights inside the city. If you go outside of the law, you become an outlaw, which means you're outside of the protection of the law, and now the law persecutes you. Think about it. God's wrath comes against those who are lawbreakers. But in Christ, we are inside of the law. We are inside of Him. We're protected. It's no different here. What is law is the pivotal question right now. Well, I'm going to go to the Declaration of Independence, something we talked about yesterday. It's the term law of nature, and nature's God. Can you say that with me? It's an important, fundamental phrase, the foundation of America. Everybody understood it to mean laws of nature. Say Congress wants to give you the right to fly. This is the easiest one. So they got to get rid of gravity because gravity exists. So they're going to make gravity illegal because it's sexist. It hates women, never lets them fly. It's racist. It hates black people, never lets them fly. It's homophobic. It hates homosexuals. It never lets them fly. It's very bigoted. It doesn't let Muslims fly. You should see the last Muslim to try. Gravity. Punished him, right? We need to get rid of gravity. So I convinced all the knuckleheads in Congress we're going to get rid of gravity. It's a beautiful thing. We write the bill. It's about this high. We haven't figured it all out. We're going to pass it, then figure it out. Pass it, then figure it out. And the president signs it because he thinks it'd be great to be the first president to usher his people into flight. The Supreme Court gets it because it's challenged by us, to our sexist, racist, homophobic bigots, right? Because we think gravity's a good idea. Because if we tell people that there's no such thing as gravity, they might hurt themselves. And nonetheless, we lose, because popular culture wants their right to fly. So, the Supreme Court says, hey, everybody listens to what we say. We're living and evolving. Maybe we can have the right to fly. They give us the right to fly. Tomorrow morning, we get up on the building, and we're going to fly. I'll let you go first, because I'm the politician. You jump. What happens?
It's flat.
That's right, you die. Why? Because you broke the law of nature called gravity, and nothing can stop the consequence of that. I ask little children, what, you don't trust the best and brightest minds in the country? They said you could fly. Congress, you know. Kids are like, oh no. The president, the most powerful man in the world? Oh no. You try it first, Mr. Jake. Kids aren't dumb. They understand these concepts. We shouldn't be dumb either. These concepts exist. And just because we create a law that says they're illegal doesn't change anything. Standing on train tracks saying, I believe it's a marshmallow train. It's not going to change the fact that you become the marshmallow. You don't have the right to do wrong. I'm getting a little bit deeper. William Blackstone, if you don't understand him, we'll talk about him more and we discuss him in our commentaries. This man was the premier when it came to law, common law, laws of nature, and nature's God. Our founders quoted him incessantly. He never came to America, but he's technically one of our founding fathers. He made this statement. All courts in America, by the way, rule by common law. It's the 7th Amendment of the Constitution. No enactment of man can be considered law unless it conforms to the law of God. Man, that's an awesome statement. Wouldn't you love to hear some of those Christians that serve in office say something like this? There is some that do, but typically they get removed or blackballed. But that's the truth. It's not law. It may sound like law, smell like law, look like law, be at the tip of a legislator's pen, but it's not law. Why? Because God creates law. And government's job is, well, let's talk about the American view. What is government's job? First, if you're going to be American and you're going to run for office, this is what makes us different from the rest of the world. We believe there is a God. Can you say that with me?
There's a God.
Number two, our rights come from Him. Number three, the purpose of civil government is to protect God-given rights. It's right here, faith, values, and the Constitution. It's all summed up in these three phrases. Quintessentially, this is the American view of law and government. Somebody serving in office that doesn't believe these three statements, they don't belong in office. They're not going to, in the long term, secure your rights. They may be great people. They may be very smart. But oftentimes, good is the enemy of best, and this is the best. Right here. People say, well, Jake, you're just a preacher. That's why you say that. Well, I am. And the Bible does say that, but it also says in our Declaration of Independence. Really simply, we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal. We didn't evolve equal. We didn't bang into existence. We're created. There is a creator. So therefore, there is a God. We are endowed by our creator with certain unalienable rights, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. So our rights come from God. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. So what's the government's job? To be God's minister, to protect your rights that He gave you by enforcing the law that He gave. He gave you the right to life. He created a law to protect your life. Which law did He create that protects life? Thou shalt not kill. Okay. He gave you the right to property. He created the law, so thou shalt not steal. He gave children the right to two parents. He said, thou shalt not commit. That's right. These laws because He loves us. He loves us. What's that about? It's like a hurricane. I am retreated from the Mayflower Compact. In the name of God, amen. This is what they wrote the first Constitution in America. They tell us why they came here. Right here. Having undertaken for the glory of God this voyage and the advancement of the Muslim faith. Want the world to see the love and generosity of Allah, especially you women. He really loves you. That's what it's about. It's Christian faith. And if you're Muslim, you can come to America because Christians will treat you awesome because we believe you're created in God's image and you have fundamental rights to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness and property. If you're atheist, if you're homosexual, it doesn't matter what you are, you're created in God's image. That's what Jesus was doing. When He came to this earth, looking at His creation, He was created in His image, and He was heartbroken. They had gone after their own lusts, their own passions. And He was there to redeem them back to the Father through love. Now, if you don't follow the law, what happens? You're an outlaw, now you're persecuted by the law. So if you're any of those people groups, no matter what you are, and you break the law, yes, there's consequences for that, but that's only out of love. Because when you break the law, you've encroached on somebody else's rights. And God loves the innocent, therefore He protects them by upholding law. Does that make sense? So, no matter who you are, just because we're a Christian nation doesn't mean you're going to be persecuted. My goodness, it's not what Christians do. And if you look at our society today, you see it's the other way around. We reiterated this theme back in 1643, the Articles of Confederation of the United Colonies of New England. Whereas we all came into these parts of America with one and the same end and aim, namely to advance the kingdom of our Lord Jesus Christ and to enjoy the liberties of the gospel and purity with peace. Preserving and propagating the truth and liberties of the gospel and for their own mutual safety and welfare. Why do we want to preserve, right here, the truth and liberties of the gospel? For our own good. It makes sense. These things all feed off each other. All men are created equal, Genesis 1:27. Some people say, well, where is God in the Constitution? I don't see it. If I hand you a loaf of bread, and it's a big loaf of bread, and I say, is there yeast in this bread? You say, well, yeah. How do you know? Well, it rose. All right, find for me some of the yeast in the bread. I want to see you find it. It's in the evidence, right? It's the same thing in our country. We're created, Section 4 gives us a Republican government, small, or not the Republican Party. A republic means that we're all under law. We're all created equal, and God and government is not above the law. And you can see that in Article 4, Section 4, and Exodus 18. Jethro had some good advice. Once in a while, the father-in-laws get it right. Okay? So select capable men from all the people, men who fear God, trustworthy men who hate dishonest gain, and appoint them as officials over thousands. There's federal, hundreds, there's state, 50s, there's local, over 10s, there's family government. So there was this vertical distribution of power in the Hebrew Republic. And our founding fathers patterned after it. We've got 3 branches of government. Guess what? Look at the book of Isaiah. The Lord is our judge, lawgiver, and king. There's 3 different branches of government, 3 different ways that God preserves our liberties. But notice only God can sit in all 3 branches. If you put a man in all 3 branches, he will tyrannize you. I don't care who he is, how much you like him, how much he says he loves Jesus. How pro-life he is, doesn't matter. Men are sinful. That's why we need them separated. We need checks and balances. Witness and capital punishment. No person shall be convicted of treason unless on the testimony of 2 witnesses, the same overt act or confession in open court. In the Bible, Deuteronomy 17:6, 2 or 3 witnesses. It's the only way you can be convicted of a capital crime. You need 2 witnesses. Of course, we extract this out of the book of Deuteronomy. And the founders used these as their writings, and most of the preachers were talking about this stuff during the colonial days. So they were educated from the Bible how government should run and operate. Purpose of government. Anybody ever heard of public service? Public servant. Try to call them that nowadays. Police officer, to protect and serve. He is a minister, which English, you translate that to be a servant. He's a servant to you for your good, right? A minister of God, a servant of God. So this is where we get these concepts of government. They're put in position to serve. Jesus said, if you want to be the greatest, you must become a servant. So they're put there to serve. Too much is given, much is required, right? These are things and concepts that we find in the Bible. Separation of church and state. We have 4 walls in this room, okay? I'm just going to check out my timer and see how I'm doing. Sweet, I got about 2 hours left, so we're good. Okay. Somebody close that door and lock it. Just kidding. So we have 4 walls in this room, okay? Separation of church and state is a concept that we want. Oh, I was kidding. Well, no, I wasn't. There's 4 walls in this room, and there's a ceiling. For the sake of this analogy, I'm going to explain separation of church and state, and we want separation of church and state. We really do. But what we don't want is what we understand nowadays as separation of church and state. Because that's not good. So, here's the correct understanding. We ready? All right, 4 walls in this room. Ceiling, we're going to put God on because he's above all the walls. And 4 walls represent 4 government jurisdictions. And I have a DVD about this in case you don't catch this on the first run. And I will be doing it one more time, I think, in my next session. So with these 4 walls, we're going to put 4 governments. First, God-ordained self-government. Self-government is the most important government that exists. It prevents me from going out and killing people, using profanity in public, beating my children, wearing clothes in public. I mean, all of these things are self-governing examples. God gave the 10 Commandments to us to self-govern ourselves. Our parents cannot force us to obey the 10 Commandments. You have to choose to obey the 10 Commandments, okay? Now, we all know that children aren't very self-governed, right? That's why God created. Well, we're going to put self-government on this back wall, right there, okay? So going back to children, now they're self-governed. So God ordained family government, right? There's a family government system. Now, I have self-government here, but I can't come into your family, sir, and I can't spank your children, even if they deserve it. It's not my jurisdiction, it's not my authority. I don't belong on your wall of family government. So family has its own jurisdiction that no other walls can interfere with, okay? Family's jurisdiction is to train your children the way they should go. When they're old, they will not depart from it, okay? Secondly, it's to administer health, education, and welfare. You're supposed to train your children in the nurture, admonition, and fear of the Lord. Moses said you're to teach them. So education belongs on the family wall because families have children, right? The state doesn't have children, do they? And I've been to all sorts of states, and even in California, the state has never been pregnant. Hey, would you do me a favor and turn your phones on vibrate? State's never been pregnant. Is today Friday?
Yes.
Okay. State's never been pregnant. Okay, so education belongs to the family. It's your jurisdiction. Now you can delegate that to private education, so on and so forth. The government should not be training children. Secondly, welfare. How many kids in here live with your parents? That's everybody who's on welfare. Because unless you're Amish, none of you are increasing the bottom line. You're sucking off the system. You're entitled. Some of you act like it. So what happens is you get welfare while your parents train you in the way you should go. And then you leave your father and mother and join to your husband or wife. You become one flesh. You get out of the basement. And then what happens? Then you get to administer welfare. And it's so fun! You have your own family. The jurisdiction starts over. Welfare is never meant to be perpetual. Thirdly, we have health care. Where do your children go when they're sick? Go to mom and dad. They don't call the mayor. Mr. Governor, man, I can't get rid of this sore throat. Can you help me, dude? No. Healthcare starts with the family contracts and things. Now, we have another jurisdiction of government called the church government. This is a big deal. Church is huge. It's supposed to be the salt and light of the culture, right? A city set on a hill. It's a lamp up there shedding light. The first and primary function of the church is to speak the prophetic word of God to all the other government jurisdictions. Civil government, self-government, family government, right? Remember when our pulpits used to actually preach about sin?
That's right.
I mean, they used to point the finger too. They might even come to your house. Why? Because they loved you. They don't want to see you depart from God. So church's job is to speak that prophetic word. They even speak it to government too, and should be. Read the Old Testament, happened constantly. Even in the New Testament, John the Baptist is calling out Herod because of his sin. Jesus said, go tell Herod that fox, right? I mean, so there were certain times where religious men, Christian men, spoke to civil authority. Now, they also take care of welfare, don't they? Jesus said, if he's naked, clothe him. If he's hungry, feed them. Did you know that the largest orphanage system in the world is run by the Christian church? I mean, think about it. When we have natural disasters, who goes running down to those disasters? The National Atheist Organization?
That's right.
It's churches and Christian groups. It's right out of charity. They're giving money, they're giving time, they're laying down their lives. How about education? Was the church ever involved in education? You better believe it. That's where the school was. Remember Little House on the Prairie? By the way, I'm from Minnesota. That's where Laura Ingalls Wilder's from. Woo! I got all 9 seasons, baby. I love that show. When I was speaking in California, I went to Simi Valley, and I stood where Pa came walking out of his carriage to Ma, and she was there with the kids, you know? That's it, I'm taking pictures. It's cool. Anyway, so I digress. So education happened in the church. The church's job. Why? Because the Word of God tells us as the church to educate our kids, especially in the laws of God. The textbooks in most schools were the Bible, Watts hymnals. I mean, you're memorizing stuff. You learn to read the New England Primer, so on and so forth. So the church has that too. The church has welfare. Who started all the hospitals in our country? Churches. Non-profits. Think of the names of hospitals in your neighborhood. St. Agnes, St. Jude's. They're generally named after Christians or those that gave charitably. That's where healthcare was. And now you have the state government. We're going to put it over here on this wall. So church government is back here. State government is on this wall. All the walls are separate. They all got their own duties and functions. Kind of like, if you understand this, kids, if your brother or sister walks into your room without asking your permission, you kick their butt out. Get out! It's my room. You lock the door. That's what we should be doing with these jurisdictions. If one jurisdiction crosses over to another, we should kick them out. We have authority to do it because this is our wall. So in that state jurisdiction, civil government, what is the job of government? Does anybody remember? Did you wear your holy pants? I remember you do. Okay. I almost forgot. Sidetracked. What's the job of civil government?
To protect.
To protect. That's right. So should civil government protect the church? Should civil government protect the family?
Yeah.
Should civil government protect you? Yes. Now, are you separate from God? No. Is the family separate from God?
No.
Is the church separate from God?
No.
Is the government separate from God?
No.
No, they're all below him. He's on the ceiling, and they all do a function that he ordained. Now, the separation of church and state in this room exists in this corner. We separate the government wall from the church wall. Why do we do that? Because we don't want Trump to come in and preach 2 Corinthians to us and force our pastor to sit down and listen, right? If he does that, pastor, you and the elders get up and say, Mr. Trump, thanks for coming. You can listen, but you're not taking over the pulpit. And he says, oh, yes, I am. No one preaches better than me. I'm the best preacher. Trust me. What What do? You throw them out of the church. Say there's a separation of state. Different functions, different duties, different authorities. Now, Pastor, you don't have to raise up an army and go defend the borders. You might do a better job. But you don't have to. Why? Because there's a separation of church and state. If somebody in your congregation gets robbed, you don't go run after the criminal and throw him in jail. You can't. It's a separation of church and state. You visit him in jail, but you can't throw him in jail. Separation of church and state exists. We want it to exist, and we don't want the government to force you to worship a certain way. That's left up to the church to determine those things. But what there is not, not really that bad. I don't miss those days. I'm just kidding. I'm totally having fun. There we go. Okay, so separation of church and state we want, but what there is not, which doesn't exist, but it's what we think separation of church is separation of God and government, isn't it? Because if we notice in our society and our culture, it's a natural tendency of power and money, which basically is what government is, for them to jump up onto the ceiling and start telling you what you can and cannot do in your private property, who you can and cannot sell to in your private business, your self-government. Wants to get involved with the family, don't they? Tell you what you can and cannot teach your kids, how you can and cannot discipline them, if you need to vaccinate them or not, what they can eat for school lunch, so on and so forth, right? And they want to come over to the preachers. They want to silence the preachers. You can't talk on this, you can't talk on that. You can't speak about this. You can't have a nativity scene here. You can't pray before city council members or meetings, right? Government is up here trying to call the shots. And we look to government for all of the things that we have in America. Unfortunately, in most of our universities, they want that. Look at the protests. We want government to come in and take away a God-given right of self-defense. Second Amendment. So, we've got to get our thinking correctly. We've got to get back to the American view of law and government. Let's say it together. Number one.
There is a God.
Number two.
Our rights come from Him.
Number three.
The purpose of civil government is to secure our value and rights.
That is what we teach in our course. It's a 12-lecture course. This is also a civics or U.S. government credit if you're a middle school or high school student. 20-minute DVDs, just like the Truth Project. You watch a DVD, I suggest the whole family does it. Most of our graduates are adults. We have 4 adults that graduate from our courses for every 1 student. They get taught as Bible studies in churches. We have legislators and certain people running for public office, local office, so on and so forth, that take our courses. This is essential to get this foundational thinking and know how to apply this to what exists out there today. Because if we don't, I mean, it says, my people, and this verse gets a lot of mileage. My people are destroyed for a lack of
knowledge.
But the key is in the remaining. Because you have rejected knowledge, I will reject your children. It's not that knowledge wasn't sitting there. You can go to the archives building and look at these documents. They're still there, no matter what the Supreme Court has tried to do with them. They're sitting there. You can read them. They exist. These truths are self-evident and they exist. But if there's no application of it, there's no knowledge of it in the hearts of the people, well, then guess what? It's a piece of paper and it does nothing. And that gets me going. Creation or evolution, again, going back to faith, values, and the Constitution. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. This is important, and the ramifications, if we believe in the other side of evolution, is this. Creation says you've got the moment you're created. Life, liberty, property, you're cool. Government's job to protect that, your family to nurture that, so on. The church's job is to preach God's word to that. But if you evolve equal, just go back to Germany for me. Do you remember they got the funny mustache in the 40s, 30s, right? You know, did he believe that Jews had the right to life?
No.
I'm sorry, let's start in the reverse order. Did they have the right to property? No, he stole it from them. Took all their houses, their bank accounts, their businesses, their jewelry, their gold teeth, took it all. They didn't have the right to property. Why didn't they have the right to property? Because they were animals. They hadn't evolved enough, right? Actually, they were worse than animals, according to him. Secondly, did they have liberty? No, they lived in concentration camps and ghettos. So they had no liberty. They couldn't come and go as they pleased. It was at the whims of Adolf Hitler and his SS. Did they have the right to life? No, they could be shot and killed at any time, and it didn't matter. Nobody got in trouble for it. Why? Because of evolution. And here's what happens. If you believe in evolution, that is the source of a pagan view of government. Now this you could throw all the isms in. Communism, Marxism, democracy you can throw over here too. Because it puts the people as the authority rather than the law. Which again, the law is God's law, law of nature, nature is God. It says the state is divine. So in other words, the government is God. Unlimited authority with the government. In other words, who can tell God what to do? It makes sense, right? This is logical. It's not a conspiracy. I mean, this is just what's being played out right now. You will eventually worship something that has unlimited authority, won't you? Just ask Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, or Daniel, or Paul, for that matter, or the New Testament church. Or, hey, Christians today around the world that are preaching the gospel in hostile government areas, right? You got to worship Big Daddy. And you may not worship him by doing this. That's kind of old and weird. We don't do that anymore. But you worship him by doing everything he says or else, right? Well, anything you worship other than God will tyrannize you, won't it? And the more you give to it, it will require more, right? It's kind of like sin, the worst tyrant in the world. I told you my story. I was my biggest tyrant. I made myself God. That didn't work out very well. This is based off evolution. We're the monkeys. They stand upright and they tell us what to do. And they are divine. They are government. Does that make sense? That sounds extreme. I know it does. And when I get into discussions with people in universities, they're like, oh, come on. Like, have you ever studied history? That's right. Oh, yeah, I remember the Iraq War. Biblical view of government is what the American view of government is, okay? Government is divinely ordained by God. So God said, Romans 13, government is God's minister. But that authority is limited. Government only has one wall. That's it. Jesus said, give to Caesar, give to that wall what belongs to that wall. But give to God what belongs to God. He made the distinction quickly. So we didn't become government worshipers, we became God worshipers. And his followers worship God. And they refused to give to Caesar what belonged to God. So Christ limited Caesar in that statement. It leads to patriotism when your government is limited. You want to know the best example of limited government the way that God ordained it? Look at our veterans. How many of you love our veterans? How many of you are okay with paying taxes to support their prosthetic limbs or their PTSD counseling and their health care? Absolutely. No issues. I stand in the parades. I shake veterans' hands when I see them. Because I think it's pretty cool. I was at the inauguration this year, and Trump got this verse right. Every word he pronounced correctly. Greater love hath no man than this, than a man lay down his life for his friend, his brother, depends on the translation. That's the truth. That's what government's supposed to do. Lay down one's life. And as a result, we love it. We're patriotic. How many of you love paying taxes on the 15th for Congress's schemes? You guys like that or what? How many of you pay a little extra because you like it so much? I've heard of tithing extra, but I've never heard of paying more taxes just for the heck of it. No, of course not. Why? Because they're over here, aren't they? Veterans are over here, producing patriotism. When you're patriotic, it results in a republic because everybody realizes that God is above us all. None of us are greater than the other. And if we're a public servant, that means we walk a lower road. I was eating breakfast this morning, and the pastor here was sitting at the table, and I asked him, what do you do for work? He said, I'm a pastor. I said, are you a poor man? And then he said, I don't know, maybe it's a poor congregation. I said, I've never met a poor congregation. To walk in service like that, to be a pastor, to be somebody who runs a government, and you're doing it according to your oath, it is a low walk. It really is. Doing what I do is fun. I get to travel the country, but sometimes I encounter situations where people are very horrible and brutal to me. They take your words out of context and they just pound you with it, especially when you go to universities. I mean, you literally get attacked. Those kids know how to fight, which is why I want to get them saved, because we need to fight, but with righteous warfare, right? Okay, this is based off creation. Remember, we're all created equal. Even if you're in government or you have a badge, you're equal to me, and you have to stay in your jurisdiction. George Washington said, and if you study the Founding Fathers, these men wrote extensively on faith. They were extensively involved in their churches and service. John Jay, the first Supreme Court Justice, started the American Bible Society. Thomas Jefferson supported the Bible Society in Virginia. So did Benjamin Franklin. These guys were doling out cash for this stuff, man. And where your money is, there your heart is. I mean, they saw the relevance and the reality of how important the church body was to make sure that society flowed correctly. So government had to do very little. He said, of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. They're the two pillars. When Samson was brought out after sin, do you remember the story of Samson? So he laid his head on Delilah's lap. Delilah means delight. He sinned, right? He gave into his lust. Then he lost his eyes. Then he's sitting in a dungeon. And all the Philistines are partying. We beat God! Yeah! We got Samson! They bring him out. Where does Samson ask the boy to put him? Do you remember? Between the two pillars. There's two pillars in this building. Why do you think Samson would want to go to the two pillars, young lady? Not sure, Phil. Why do you think? Anybody? No? Okay. All right, how about you? Wait. How about this young man? Sorry, you're too old. Go ahead. Why do you want to go on the pillars?
To break down the pillars.
To break the pillars? Why would you want to break the pillars?
To collapse the building.
Because the building would collapse. That's right. Washington said if you break down religion and morality, your political prosperity goes right along with it. And then he says you can't even be a patriot if you read the rest of the quote. In layman's terms, you can't be a patriot if you labor against religion and morality in America. You're not really a patriot. You're an American. I would say that's the truth, because these principles and concepts keep everybody free and safe, because it denotes that there's a higher authority than man, a higher authority that gave us our rights. So whether you're a Christian or not, you want to believe that, because if man gives you your rights, you could be in trouble one day. Stay tuned for which political party gets power. You could be at the end of the sword, or you could be holding the sword. And again, going back historically speaking, that was how Europe ran. One guy chopped off another guy's head, he was in power. Then the Catholic got in power. Then the Protestant got in power. And all this stuff, it was unstable. Now we keep government power and the sword out of religion and out of your belief systems. They just secure your God-given rights so long as you live by the law. This is interposition. Interposition is a veteran standing between us and danger, right? Now I'll tell you my story of interposition if I got a second to. Yes! Still got time. Only an hour and 20 minutes left. Okay. Here's a quick story. Do you guys remember the hymn? Well, no, I'll sing it in a second. So I was sitting in a church that was about this big, a teen challenge, right? When I went there, it was weird. It just was. All these guys, preachers, talking about Jesus like 24/7. Like, you do that once a week, bro. Isn't this a little heavy? Every day, you're doing Bible classes, stuff. Everybody's calling me brother. I'm like, clearly I'm not your brother. We got different paint jobs. Come on. What do you mean, brother? I couldn't get into this whole religious thing. So I'm sitting in a church, because that's where they brought you. And I was sitting there, and I wasn't paying attention to anybody. I thought this was Looney Tunes. I had a plan. My friend was going to come pick me up. We were going to live in Missouri. I was going to run away. It was a bulletproof plan. But while I was sitting there, somebody was up in there talking. I wasn't listening to that. And all of a sudden, it was like, this was a very spiritual experience for me. And I'm not saying you have to have this experience to be a Christian. Because my kids never did the stuff that I did. And sometimes they wonder, well, have I even been converted yet? So don't think that. This is what happened. The roof came off the building, and the eye of Saruman came right on me. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? And poor Phil. And the eye was like, Mr. Frodo, you know. That's what it was like for me. I hadn't seen the movies yet either, but that's what it reminds me of. This didn't physically happen. I didn't see it with my eyes. This is what it felt like. The wrath of God was coming at Jake MacAulay like a freight train. Up until that point, I had not even realized it. Because I had seared my conscience so much. And I had scales on my eyes. I couldn't understand. I was without learning. But here I was, this kid who grew up in America. God put me here in America. 2 parents loved me. All these opportunities. I told you about my skills in athletics, academics, so on and so forth. But I didn't care. You know what? I hated my parents. Why? They're always telling me no. They're so dumb. Don't they know I just want to have fun? Why are you getting down on me because of my friends? Why are you judging them? I hated my principal. It was like he profiled us in the hallway. I mean, so what if we smelled like smoke? So what if we wore our hats when we weren't supposed to, or we dyed our hair when we weren't supposed to, or we wore mohawks, or we were doing drugs in the bathroom? What's the big deal, man? We're just kids. Probation officer, boy, did I hate her. She hated me. Man, she was always looking at me sideways, like I was doing something wrong. And like these drug tests, like I failed them because I actually did drugs. What? And the cops, boy, did we really hate them. Why do we hate the cops? Because they stood against everything that we stood for. And whenever one would drive by, all of our heads would turn to see if they were going to pull us over. Cops were jerks. We had clever names for them. They chased us down. But see, I was blinded. I thought they were the enemy. I thought the law was the bad guy. I was the outlaw. And when I was sitting in that church, I saw that. And here comes the wrath of God. I actually deserved this. And I was terrified. I really was. So I grabbed the Bible. Because that's what sinners do, right? When it's time to get to God, you grab the Bible. So I grabbed the Bible, and I'm thumbing through it. I'm like, okay, how do I get saved? because the rest of these weird people don't seem very concerned about this right now. So I'm going, and I wind up in the book of Acts, and that's where Paul the Apostle's conversion happens. And I found it, as a manipulator and as a, kid. I'm like, yeah, well, he's worse than I was, so I think I can get saved. And I just said, Jesus saved me. I mean, it was so raw. Whatever, Jesus just saved me. Just do something. Do what you do. And that's when I saw Christ interpose for me. Now, do you remember the hymn? Rock of Ages. Oh, no, excuse me. Come thou fount. Come thou fount of many blessings. Do you remember? Jesus sought me when a stranger, wandering from the fold of God. He to ransom me from danger interposed his precious blood. Yeah! That's what he did! There's never a time where, like, Jesus misses either. Here comes the wrath of God. Oh, I got it, don't worry. Oh, I missed it. Oh, that didn't work out good for Jake. He always gets it. He's always on time. He's always at the right place, and he never loses. And I love that about Jesus. Because he's always there. That's where our veterans were. That bullet didn't find us because it found somebody else. This is the concept. You get it? And that's a holy sacrifice. It's something we honor, we respect. I don't care what religion you are, who you are. You respect this because it saved one's life. And if we could learn how to present the gospel that way, I think more people would get on board, wouldn't they? But that's up to the Lord, and that's up to us opening our mouths. The point I want to make is our founding fathers made that same proclamation. Let's read what they wrote in the Declaration of Independence. Remember, they were coming between us, Americans, and the greatest empire of the world. I mean, they really were. The sun never went down on the English Empire. Did you know that? They racked the globe, dude. They had the biggest army. They had the most funding. They had the biggest army. They should have crushed us. We were just a ragtag little Gideon's army, boy. But Gideon didn't get crushed, did he? That's right. He whooped some Midian butt. And then after he was done, he chased them to finish him off. Because that's what the Holy Spirit does. Once we've been saved, we revenge all disobedience. Now we're after that stuff. So now I go back to my old friends that I used to party with. Dude, you got to hear about this Jesus thing. And it was like, guys, no, really, listen, I'm serious. But now years later, I've been able to get in touch with them through the book face thing on our phones. And some of them are becoming Christians. It's really cool. I'm way sidetracked here, guys. Let's read what the Founding Fathers said when they declared independence, because, see, they interposed themselves as well. And for the support of this declaration,
with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
So they did. Their sacred honor, because if they would have lost, these guys would have been Bin Laden. It would have been the Taliban. And yeah, they had a lot to risk. I mean, George Washington could have been a general in the King's Army, piece of cake, hands down. He was prior to that. Thomas Jefferson could have been a great writer for King George. He would have loved it. King George tried to hire John Adams after the Boston Massacre when he represented British troops and got them to be free. Benjamin Franklin, there's nobody in the world that wouldn't have taken him on and owned him. He actually disavowed his British citizenship and said, I'm an American, in a courtroom in England. So these men had everything to lose. Why did they do it? I think it goes back to the scriptural text where Jesus said, if you want to be the greatest, you become a servant. And I thank God that at that particular time, a miracle happened where men, even though every one of these men up here were very sinful men, they were horrible people left to themselves and their own devices. Somehow God worked this whole thing together. And that's why faith, values, and the Constitution, I think, are synonymous. This was a miraculous act. Now everybody say with me, the Constitution is not the Bible.
The Constitution is not the Bible.
It has needed to be amended and will continue to be amended because it's not perfect, because it's not the Bible. But every place that the Constitution rests its authority with its precepts and statutes back on the Bible, we can bank on that. Now everybody say with me, the Founding Fathers are not Jesus.
The Founding Fathers are not Jesus.
Let's say Ronald Reagan is not Jesus.
Ronald Reagan is not Jesus.
Barack Obama is not Jesus.
Obama is not Jesus.
Now, all these people that I just explained are Jesus to some people. Do you realize that? Mm-hmm. Many people worship the Founding Fathers. You know, they're libertarian, they love the concepts, they love the man, they kind of deify him. A lot of people deify Ronald Reagan. I've been in rooms where I think people probably, you know, if Jesus came walking in, he would look like Ronald. And there's a lot of people that deify Barack Obama. Now, all of these men have certain gifts, certain talents, certain things that they've done on behalf of their maybe people group that supported them, but they're not Jesus. And I'm not trying to say our founders were. But what I want to do is plug every man, woman, and child back into biblical principles. Some people fish for Jesus. They bring fishermen on fishing trips and preach the gospel. I use the Constitution to do it because it's very easy to do it that way. And I want to point back to God and His sovereignty over us all. No matter what walk of life, oh sorry, that's from a presentation. Do it at church. Well, I mean, you can still give money. I'm not saying you can't. But that's not supposed to be there. There we go. These are our kits, study kits. We have a basic kit for 125. We have a host kit. You can teach groups. You can teach co-ops. This is a great class to teach co-ops. Because see, you don't have to teach it. Now, mothers, how many of you are looking for another curriculum? You got to study 3 hours a day to teach your kids. You guys looking forward to that? Like, give me more! This is real simple. You pop a DVD and you don't have to do any prep work. You just let the student watch the DVD. There's a lecture review test, so on and so forth. I'll explain later, and I'll do that at the table too. We have a sheriff's course. We have a pastors and elected officials course because we think pastors need to get on board with this. So we're doing these courses all around the country. Certain pastors are inviting their pastor friends, their deacons, their elders, and so on and so forth to come and take this so that the church can teach this as a Bible study in their church. How many would love to have a Bible study like this in your church? Oh, absolutely. Because I'll tell you what, it brings all glory to God, and it is a Bible study. This isn't a study for the Republican Party. It's just not. We're not stumping for any parties. We're stumping for Christ. Benjamin Rush, if anybody's heard of him, founding father from Pennsylvania, first state's Surgeon General. He's a very smart, brilliant man. He served in the administration of, I think, 4 different presidents, 4 different political parties. He said, I've been accused of being an aristocrat, a Democrat. I am neither. I'm a Christocrat. I'm a Christocrat. I serve Christ. And those principles doesn't matter what party I'm in because I'm serving Christ, and I love that. We also have a theory course. We have constitutional helps and study guides. Okay, now we can do Q&A, but we don't have a whole ton of time, but we have some time.